The dead must have their revenge.
Man, shut your...
Between the sheer excitement when this highly requested matchup was first announced, the hype brought by the show creators for the actual episode, and everything I heard about Guts vs Dimitri shaping up to be something as epic as Chosenborn and as tragic as Obi Vader, there was a lot going in for this episode for me. So, did it live up to the hype? Oh come on, you had the title and thumbnail, let's just get into the breakdowns. I really like how Guts' analysis starts almost like a bard telling the folktale of a legendary hero at the tavern, before delving into his trauma-wama of a backstory. He really sets the mood nicely, and when they do talk about his past, it is less, oh, all that pain and sorrow made Guts a badass, and more, oh, this man's life is haunted by tragedy seemingly every time things seem to look up, very much choosing to pay respect instead of glorifying it all, which is a recurring choice they take throughout this episode as a whole. The fact that only one or two combatants originates from a panel-centric source material probably helps, but the ending for all Guts manga strips is as great as it is in most comic book episodes, really nice. I feel like both breakdowns go by really fast, not to say they felt rushed, more about my subconscious being so captivated by the pacing in both summaries that time just flew by, I guess. The Berserk side of things not being uncharted territory for the show probably explains part of that, but less so for Dimitri presentation, which I deem to be also pretty great.
Oh, hi there!
Salutations, young Tommy! How you doing today?
Never really feeling lost or confused at this new franchise. And this might sound crazy considering it's a Nintendo property, but I feel like the exploration of Dimitri's mental state sounded darker than Guts. I don't know, maybe there's something about generally thinking you hear the voices of your dead loved ones restlessly crying for vengeance just hits me more than it being a demon beast thingy, as cooler as the latter is. It honestly reminded me a lot of the Battle F of Samurai Jack Season 5. In fact, both combatants remind me of Samurai Jack at various points in his life. This breakdown is also much less stat heavy, ironically for being a video game character, and the old gag about the DB team lightly arguing about factions, funnily enough mention each and every one except Dimitri's, was as cute as it was amusing. And despite their backstories being both chock full of betrayal, trauma and grief, they both ultimately end on hopeful notes for the future, making again for a beautiful symmetry, like the last peak episode of the show. Kinda weird they used Dimitri's thumbnail pic instead of a slasher smile that matches Guts, since from what is shown there's no scarcity of those for this character. That said, time to get into the actual battle.
Episode of Death Battle is brought to you by BetterHelp.
Sometimes in life you can get
BetterHelp! The fight starts with Guts and Dimitri's blades echoing in a snowy mountainscape whose white ground is just begging to be covered by the upcoming bloodshed this duel will unleash. Now, that's a guarantee with them being them, but why are they fighting exactly? Well, there's no explicit setup, which has the upside of giving more screen time for the actual fight, but it is implied to Dimitri's dialogue.
100 men strong. What drives your slaughter? Tear your head from your shoulders! The dead must have their revenge!
That he specifically wants to take revenge for a group killed by Guts, which to him probably would be just another Tuesday. This starting stance makes the shift at the end even more meaningful, but let's just cross one bridge at a time. After referencing this famous panel from Berserk, and the blades clash some more with some splendid choreography in both the visual and sound design department, the two warriors stifling arsenals take the center stage, and my god, I love the contrast between Guts fighting like a medieval zombie apocalypse survivor full of gadgets, think Ash Williams meets Conan the Barbarian, and Dimitri's penchant for power-ups and elemental magic, and he's not even canonically that good at it, but you know what they say? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. The clash between Dimitri's theoretically talkative nature and Guts' more taciturn demeanor is also another layer of great contrast that keeps the fight engaging. I know I keep underlining this aspect in my reviews, but just because two fighters have a Bible 2.0 worthy amount of similarity, there's still gotta be some explicit differences that makes for more dynamic chemistry, at least for me. Guts decides to channel his inner Rambo as he draws first blood by blowing out Dimitri's back,
Pause on that!
followed by Dimitri channeling his inner Michael Myers as he stabs him onto a tree. Now, what all this builds up towards is one of the most hyped scenes in the show history. And god, I hope me saying that won't stop being meaningful, because pretty much I said that every single episode so far. What happens next is Dimitri mixing up his lighting and ice spells to immobilize the Black Swordsman, great animation the ice spikes by the way, but things are about to heat up since Guts blows up Dimitri's attempt with the bombs and a hand cannon, surrounding the Savior King in fire and flame. Now at first I thought Guts was gonna have a vision of seeing Dimitri as Griffith, since they're both caped up pretty boys with long hair. But as the fire burned Dimitri's cape to a crisp, I figured it wasn't gonna be Guts to want to have his mind scramble in this scene. Now, being stabbed to the heart like his former friend Edgar did could have been just a cute callback. But being surrounded by fire is the second trauma button of Dimitri that gets pushed in this fight, as he hears the voices of his loved ones echoing in his head. Guts meanwhile hears the beast of sacrifice urging him to yield to it, in a very nice hand-drawn effect, much like Dimitri's windsweep effect was earlier. What happens next is one of those scenes that I have to let play in full.
Promise, I'll kill them, all of them, down to the last one!
Guts down to the last one, combined with Dimitri's kill every last one of them, is such a great combination that honestly makes me think they were made to be meshed together in a crossover one day. The cutting back and forth, the voice performances from both actors, including a first timer on the show, the music escalating, like, do you see this? It's just peak. What follows is somewhat yet another orgasm for both my eyes and ears, as Guts' armor manifests with some crunchy sound effects and amazing visuals, roaring at his adversary, as Dimitri turns into his awakened state, which admittedly is just him glowing blue, but it does enhance his powers in canon, enough power to dissipate all the fire around him. The fight carries on with a different type of hit, with some powerful sound effect as the blades keep clashing and brutality keeps occurring, though I love how even in this state, Guts does something as simple as punching a pretty boy in the face, or as based as honoring the chosen undead sword swings. Swings that the king dodges as he stabs the knight in the face, to which he retorts by roaring like a demon. Dimitri activates his supermove, in a split-screen effect that I merely assume to be a reference to his gameplay without even being familiar with Fire Emblem, as he uses his atrocity attack, aka I don't care what kind of armor you have,
Fuck you!
He leaves his opponent in a puddle of blood, extracting his weapon as he walks away in a odd fashion. Come on guys, I gotta criticize at least one thing. But Guts is not quite down for the count yet, as he gets back up finally in stealthy fashion, both in general and from Dimitri, slashing his spear in two, and in yet another one of this season's neat yet subtle character moments, even with a pierced weapon, Dimitri still defends himself to the end, except...
Still standing? So we're both shackled to the dead. You foul beasts will not have his soul!
Guts died standing still, with us not seeing his face until all the light left his last remaining eye, as he ran out of blood for his armor to use, which is foreshadowed by there being no blood when Dimitri pulls out his spear from his chest. His death activates the Mark of Sacrifice, triggering the arrival of the demons meant to drag all the marked one's soul into hell. Except Dimitri was left with so much awe at his opponent's resolve, and was so touched by their seemingly cursed nature, he decides to defend Guts' corpse for anyone who will try to snatch his soul, jumping into action with cackling glee while the camera frames them as if it was a shonen anime and the rival decides to fight for his best friend till the end. If I could find one singular word to describe this moment, it would probably be something along the lines of Now, it is unfortunately another case of it's more if you're into the lore, so I've seen many general audience reactors feeling kinda lost at this point, which I totally think would have been helped by him saying he died standing instead of still standing. As far as the reception for the Fire Emblem fandom, I personally see nothing but praise at how Dimitri's character was handled from beginning to end. This final part in particular, showing the character's noble nature underneath all the sanity, apparently being accurate to most routes the character can go in game, which tells me two things. Number one, man, Dimitri must be a great character, and number 2, DB did a great job adapting this debuting franchise. I've also seen praise from the Berserk community, despite the fact that Guts lost, particularly about how he was given one of the most peaceful and dignified deaths in the show history. In fact, he's the second combatant in that battle to die from overexertion, except the last time it happened, the opponent corpse was turned into a shish kebab, while the episode featuring 2 mass murderers somehow managed to be most respectful of the two about it. Go figure. Speaking of previous fight, we technically just got a 3D fight, another 3D fight ending in a war moment of sorts. Except while Obito gave Vader peace in his last moments, Dimitri sought to defend Guts' peace after he already had his last moments. The latter honestly feels like an extended version of the former's idea, so I wonder if there was a connection in the writer's room. But speaking of respect, this episode is bloodier than most, sure, but it wasn't turned into a gore fest or a fight with a humiliatingly splattery ending just because. Guts dies in a way that almost makes him his own monument to the legendary hero he was, even inspiring the dude he met minutes ago to defend his soul from eternal torture. Granted, the dude in question was awesome to begin with, but to me, that just makes this ending even more beautiful. For the first time this season, I have mixed feelings on the track art. On one hand, it looks really messy and I'm not quite sure how I'd feel about it being traced from a panel of Berserk, since I'm not sure how common that is with these artworks. On the other hand, this idea of an entire wave of souls and corpses enveloping Guts and Dimitri's weapons is a rather fitting visualization of the, well, everything, and maybe the visual oppression is intended to represent a costly haunted mental states. God's End references both the group led by Guts' arch-enemy Griffith, aka the God End, and Dimitri's spear being a divine gift modeled after her hand, making it a little goddess's end. A third connection, and one unique to the track song, is how the quote God's End drives both the two combatants further into despair, in a cosmic plating sort of way. So I'd say it's a nice and clever title. Now the song itself, I gotta be real. I normally listen to the track after this episode, in a very as if it was intended way, but I couldn't wait this time. I listened to it first following the lyrics, then following it by the art, and thirdly during the battle itself. It's haunting metal orchestral banger full of edgy energy, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible because I feel like it perfectly matches both characters, down to the bittersweet ending. For the overall theme, again, plenty of similarities between these two powerhouses, but major differences in their executions. It's gadgets versus magic, quietness versus chattiness, speed versus strength, technically a bit of cold versus warm, at least that's the vibe I get from the thumbnail, but in the end, Dimitri's versatility given by his various magical spells, and surprisingly enough greater strength, despite this being a twink versus a hunk matchup, gave him the win. But at the same time, I feel like it's too simplistic to say this episode theme was warrior vs wizard. A lot of the fight resolution centered around Guts having a little demon in his mind, putting him into a risk greater than world armor and cursing him with the arrival of a demon horde after dying. Whereas Dimitri's demons were much more figurative, as much as insanity was very much real. So I'd say the overall theme for this episode was external demons versus internal demons. Overall, for me it's another 10 out of 10. My only complaint with so many peak episodes so close to each other is that it's probably gonna be a nightmare to rank once I do my season 10 retrospective, but that's honestly one of the best things I could complain about, to be honest. Now, I think it's time to address the bold, last of its kind alien superhero in the room. Both of them, to be exact. With Martian Manhunter vs Silver Surfer as the next episode, many cited their complaints about Marvel officially taking up off the season lineup and DC most of it, to which I can partially agree with. Hear me out. I'm personally more annoyed by people taking these complaints to absurd level of extremity more than anything. It's not like this season was anywhere near lacking in terms of requested matchups or new franchises, which was season 9 main team anyway, not this one. Nor are things anywhere near as bad as season 7. which I think a lot of people in the community should move on by now, but I digress. Now what I do agree with, however, is the type of Marvel vs DC matchups we've been getting so close to one another, aka famous cosmic level heroes with lots of X and reality bending stuff. If it was villain vs villain, something on the more street side of things, funny or even obscure matchups, I think that might have mitigated the reaction a bit. Still, personally I'm far from worried about this episode, because everything in this season, for me at least, has been either great or had elements of greatness, and I think both Norrin Red and John Jones had different enough power sets to make for an interesting match. Come on, it's basically big speed and matter/energy manipulation versus big telepathy and shapeshifting. There's potential for creativity there. Plus, you know, Silver Surfer appearing is usually followed by Galactus afterwards, so maybe... Well, while I stay high on my copium, I wish you a great day, night, evening. I'm Monk of Krypton, I hope I made your day slightly better.